Happy Wednesday, and thank you for joining today's Keeper Live. I am Marcia Dempster. I am the Senior Director of Channel Sales here at Cybersecurity. Today, I have two very special guests with us, Darren Guccione, Keeper's CEO and co-founder, as well as Craig Lurey, Keeper's CTO and co-founder. Darren CEO, Craig CTO, thank you. So welcome, Darren and Craig. As we've already wrapped up 2021, as well as hit the 2-year anniversary of COVID-19 pandemic, we've got a lot to talk about today. So while many employees are returning to their offices, at least part-time, remote and hybrid work are clearly here to stay. Distributed work has opened up many opportunities for both businesses and employees, but it has also created new attack vectors for cyber criminals. So today, Darren and Craig will share their cybersecurity predictions from last year on the cyber threat organizations can expect to face in 2022, as well as how we can protect all of our systems and data real time. So Darren and Craig, if you would please take a moment to introduce yourselves. We'll start with Darren.
Hey everyone, this is Darren Guccione, CEO. Nice to see everybody.
Hi, this is Craig Lurey, the CTO of Keeper, and nice to see everybody. Thanks.
Thank you both, and welcome to your first Keeper Live with me.
Yeah.
We're so glad to have you. Keeper obviously helps prevent password-related data breaches. Using our platform, organizations can centralize login credentials in an encrypted password vault. We can provision and maintain encrypted passwords across multiple business applications and manage users' password habits. So we're really just trying to make password hygiene a lot better for users, for companies, for businesses, for everybody across the board. So Darren, one of your cybersecurity predictions last year in 2021 was a continued increase in the frequency and cost of ransomware attacks. This was deadly accurate. So why do you think things got so bad in 2021? And what can organizations expect now that we're into 2022?
Yeah, so it's a great question. But cyber criminals, found new ways to monetize ransomware, particularly using what we call the double extortion technique, which effectively transforms ransomware attacks into data breaches. So in a double extortion attack, cyber criminals don't just encrypt the victim's data, they also steal it. So then they threaten to publicly release or sell it if the ransom is not paid. So if you look at 2021, for instance, 77% of ransomware attacks involved an extortion element. So more ominously, cybercrime cartels are starting to team up to compromise networks so they can install ransomware. So recently, for example, if you look at the Conti ransomware crime group, they've been using a highly sophisticated, well-coordinated, and multi-stage attack process that involves at least two different types of threat actors. So the first compromises the victim's machine, and then the same or possibly a second threat actor moves laterally through the network and escalates the privileges along the way. And then finally, when the privileges are sufficiently elevated, they turn access over to Conti, who destroys the company's backups and then delivers the ransomware payload. So these handoffs between stages happen very quickly, typically within hours, or at least in one case, they can happen in a few minutes. So I would say that this year, we're going to see more highly coordinated attacks like this. And of course, a continuous of the double extortion ransomware attacks.
Yeah, ransomware is definitely something a lot of organizations are struggling with. Many companies have purchased cyber insurance to cover their losses after an attack, which we see this every day here at Keeper. But cyber insurers are taking a lot of risks and losses themselves. So Darren, can you kind of describe what's happening there?
Sure. So cyber insurers, they're racking up enormous losses due to ransomware. And because of this, they're raising their premiums, limiting coverages, and really tightening the underwriting guidelines. If you look, it's like, typically within every 30 seconds, a ransom's being paid. And what most people don't realize is that, there's really north of 400 million, whether you look at small to medium-sized businesses, larger enterprises, in both the public and private sector that are paying ransoms. Typically, we don't hear about the smaller ones in the news, but they're happening every few seconds. So if you look at insurance premiums, they have skyrocketed as much as 300%. The carriers have begun what we call sublimiting ransomware, including double extortion incidents and applying co-insurance provisions. So this means that the policies will cover only a fixed amount per incident, and companies, of course, will be made to shoulder more of the risk. So if you look at the other aspect of what insurers are doing, they're also tightening underwriting guidelines. So trying to impose coverage limits on sectors that have been heavily targeted by cybercrime over the past year. Sectors like education, healthcare, the public sector, construction. We've seen manufacturing elevate, and also managed service providers as well. So in addition to the losses from ransomware, the insurers are really skittish. They're quite nervous about running afoul of the U.S. Department of Treasury. So the Treasury has already warned organizations that when you facilitate ransomware payments, those payments may be illegal under anti-money laundering statutes. So for this year, the bottom line, moving forward, it's really about companies having to pay a lot more for cyber insurance. They're going to have to deal with much stricter underwriting rules, including proving to the insurer's satisfaction that they're really taking steps to prevent ransomware attacks from happening in the first place. So the proactive approach is always the best approach, of course, for cybersecurity protection. That's what we always evangelize here. And depending on what the Treasury does, it's possible that insurers may stop covering ransomware payments completely. So that's what we're going to see.
Yeah, and that's scary. And what we say here at Keeper all the time is cybersecurity starts here. So the first step in that is really protecting those passwords and making sure you have good password hygiene. So that's definitely something companies should keep in mind. We talk a lot about ransomware because it's clearly a very serious problem, but it's not the only type of attack companies need to concern themselves with. What else are you seeing out there right now? Craig, I'd like to start with your thoughts if we could.
Sure. So, like you said, ransomware is kind of is what gets deployed and what gets, inserted into these networks. But it's all about how are they getting into there. And so there's different types of attack vectors that we're seeing, and things that have actually happened, even huge things in the last few weeks over the holiday break that have been happening. So for example, you hear about reply chain or reply jacking attacks, which at the end of the day they're looking to get a foothold into either stealing passwords into the network, escalating privileges. But the bottom line is with these reply chain or reply jacking attacks, what it is they're breaking into people's email just through, let's say, a password stuffing attack, getting into someone's valid email accounts, and then injecting themselves into threads that are making phony messages that look real, and it's very hard to distinguish those legitimate emails. And so once they're getting in there, then they're sending emails to other team members and maybe requesting information that would provide them access into the network. So it's just another way of getting that malware and that ransomware deployed into that environment. So that's one thing we're seeing. The other is a lot of people have heard about the Log4j issue. So if you haven't heard about it, it's basically a major vulnerability that was found in some open source software that's built into most Java-based applications or infrastructure, and it affected so many systems, from cloud providers to enterprise software to consumer software devices, and basically billions of devices that are running Java potentially were affected by this Log4j software vulnerability. So, if for any unpatched systems, that introduces the opportunity for these attackers to deploy ransomware, and it's just one more kind of entry point for them to be able to do it.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. The popularity of zero trust security was something that we really heard a lot about in the news, even in the public sector, the private sector in 2021. Craig, do you think that the concept of zero trust security is here to stay?
Oh yeah, and it's not just business and enterprise; it's also government. So the NIST has created guidelines around zero trust, and you see this in a lot of language and content around products that are focused on that zero trust security model. So at the end of the day, it's basically saying that the network perimeter doesn't exist anymore, and you've now got to focus on providing privileged, secure access to individual devices, whatever it is that they're accessing, whether it's from devices or laptops or mobile phones, but focusing on those endpoints and doing away with that network perimeter option. So people are getting away from VPNs and going to zero trust model types of products, providing least privilege access into systems. And so it's really, zero trust is really the only realistic way to combat those types of attacks and those elimination of the network parameters or perimeters. So the best new way to protect the enterprise moving forward is through these zero trust models. And so, it's really, you got to be proactive. And so companies have to, proactively build those types of models and, purchase products that are zero trust and move towards that model. And you'll see more enterprises going that way. And again, you'll see more public sector going that way because of some of the guidelines that have been established in government entities.
Absolutely. Craig, our resident genius here at Keeper, those are excellent points. Thank you so much. Obviously, the best tactic is to prevent attacks from happening in the first place. So a couple different questions that I'll start with Darren, and Craig, if you want to chime in, please do. How can companies achieve that? What are some cybersecurity measures that organizations should take in this new year to mitigate that risk? And how does Keeper help with all of that?
All right, well, I can jump in. So, we always say that, cybersecurity starts with password security. That has been expanded, recently with us in terms of our platform with secrets. So protecting both the human and machine side of an organization. So very powerful. Securing, passwords, credentials, and secrets is absolutely the most essential thing you can do to prevent a data breach or a ransomware attack or the other type of main cyber attack. And I would say that more than 80% of the time, these attacks are a result of those three things. So passwords, credentials, and secrets across the human and the infrastructure side of an organization. The goal here is to prevent cyber criminals from using compromised passwords and brute force attacks, not only as they enter a network, but also escalate once they're inside. So we make this easy for organizations to establish and enforce password security policies. It's all about giving the IT department and CISO visibility, access, control, the visibility that they've never had over every single endpoint across every single employee and contractor in the organization, and being able, to protect against hard-coded secrets, through CI/CD pipelines or DevOps environments, and protecting infrastructure. So very powerful application. So Craig, did you want to chime in on some of that?
Yeah, I mean, as Darren mentioned, and Marcia, in terms of protecting not just employees, but also machines, right? And a lot of these attacks are not just going to be going after, or not continuing to go after just the humans, right? They're going after the infrastructure, whether that's supply chain attacks or infrastructure type attacks. And, at the end of the day, you've got to protect those as well, which is why we just launched, Keeper Secrets Manager, which protects not just humans, but also machines, development environments, CI/CD tools, pipelines, infrastructure, and that sort of thing. So it's really critical to have controls in place for all of those infrastructure deployment tools, especially for enterprises that manage software in the cloud, or their software development company, or anybody deploying any sort of enterprise applications in the cloud has to protect those environments.
Yeah.
Definitely. Is there any other things that organizations can do to protect themselves, whether it's their users, their machines, their data in 2022? Any other hot tips that we should know?
Yeah, I can jump in on a couple. Craig, you want to start, or you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, the one that really first comes to mind is to pay attention to vulnerabilities that are being reported. These You can subscribe to lists and make sure you know when things are happening. If there's a zero day that's announced, be absolutely on top of that, and be early to react and not wait for the attackers to be the first to attack.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Darren. Yep.
Yeah, one thing I would say is, we work with so many customers globally. I would say that one of the most important things you have to do is perform regular system backups, firmware updates, software updates to all of your products and applications. It doesn't really matter what department either. I mean, we've seen obviously customer service departments get attacked, HR, finance, it doesn't matter. These cyber criminals do not discriminate, right? So for them, path of least resistance, if they can find a flaw, they will exploit it. I would also say that, train your employees on cybersecurity. Even though we're a cybersecurity software company, we put every single team member regularly and annually, new and existing, through regular cybersecurity training are very important. Things to look out for, like, how to avoid a phishing email or a text message or a social engineering attack. Extremely important, irrespective of the industry and irrespective of the size of your organization. I would also say, make sure you implement, endpoint protection is very important, especially since we all work now in distributed remote work environments. It's not even important, it's absolutely essential. So the other thing that we like to see too is that we're really big here on security and privacy assessments. So analyzing our own controls, we do SOC, we do type 1 and type 2 audits every year. We do ISO 27001 every year. As some of the people may have heard, we are on the cusp of FedRAMP certification. So we're now completing FedRAMP for the federal government. But I would say that, really put yourself through a stringent audit every single year to make sure those controls and policies are in place. And I think that, when it comes to employee credentials and passwords, that's always going to be the main pain point. And of course, the machine side, which, principally a lot of team members or the public doesn't realize how much expertise and technology is involved with operating infrastructure, multi-cloud environments, right? As we've moved from a well-defined perimeter even 3 years ago, now you've got BYOD, you've got a perimeterless, IT environment, you've got multi-cloud environments. Applications today have to be easier to use for the end user. They have to be seamless and elegant. They have to be easy to provision for the IT. And of course, we like to say that they should be competitively priced and or value driven, right? So a massive spread between cost to an organization and the value that the software is providing in terms of protection. And also with this type of software, you want to make sure that it helps enhance productivity as well. So those are really the main points that I would mention for today.
Great, love it. The last question that we have is for Craig. What do you think the hottest cybersecurity trend of 2022 is going to be, and why?
I think it's a few things, but I definitely think that as we talked about, migration to zero trust is a huge thing. And I think you're going to see organizations deploying those types of software. You're going to see new software products, not just zero trust, but also, like in our case, zero knowledge, which means that the service provider themselves can't access and can't decrypt the customer data, which is really, really critical for a password type product or protecting infrastructure. So I think we're going to see companies migrating to those types of zero trust and zero knowledge products. Also protecting infrastructure against these zero-day attacks and against password stuffing and password type of attacks against infrastructure through products like Secrets Manager. And also we're going to see a really big scrutiny of open source software, especially in light of what happened with Log4j. There's going to be more, I'm sure, coming out zero-day type of vulnerabilities found with open source software that is really highly used across organizations and many different software products. So we're going to see more attacks like that, but also we're going to see more analysis and more attention, paid to those types of really critical open source projects to make sure that they're secure. And, we see that happening just in the last few weeks, just really, really aggressively.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Great.
Darren, anything to add to that?
I think that's really, I think we've covered it today. The key is, ubiquitizing for us, it's ubiquitizing the protection and visibility across humans, machines, and then, you'll see a lot more innovation coming out over the next 2 quarters from us. We've got some amazing public announcements. We won't mention them today, but really exciting stuff coming out, some of which, of course, I know you're aware of, all of it actually. So we tend to keep those things close to the chest until they launch. But yeah, super excited. We just launched the new product a week ago, and we're launching another product in about 3 weeks, and then another product, fantastic product in Q2 that is really around bringing this, I would say, this world-class comprehensive visibility, control, and protection into any sized organization in the public and private sector, and we're super excited about it. So I appreciate you hosting today.
Love it. Lots of good things coming down the road for Keeper. I think every day there's new things that are changing, and Craig and Darren work really hard to stay ahead of cybersecurity threats, and I think that really differentiates Keeper. So thank you so much, Darren and Craig, for joining us today on this KeeperLive for this very insightful conversation. I, of course, agree that cyber attacks are only going to get more frequent, much more complex, and obviously more costly. So proactive measures to prevent attacks like this is what all companies should be focusing on. Password hygiene, password security is literally the easiest thing you can do to prevent any kind of attack. So we start there. And as Darren mentioned, we have other things coming down the pike. So keep an eye out for that to keep your companies and your families protected. For more information on cybersecurity best practices, please visit us at keepersecurity.com. You can also find myself, Darren, or Craig anywhere out there on LinkedIn, or email us directly. We kind of never stop working on keeping everybody secure. So thank you everybody for watching KeeperLive, and we will see you next time. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, and thanks everybody for attending today. Bye.